Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Thursday. I hope the day is going well wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. We are slowly making our way through the international break, the final international break, of course, of the season. All does kick off a little bit later on today. Got plenty of international action to get stuck into, including several Arsenal players tonight. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later on in the show today to see who is in action. And where I tell you what, this is about my fifth or sixth attempt to start in this video. I've had an absolute nightmare so far. I should one day just like clip up all the outtakes I do from starting these shows, because it probably end up being my most viewed video ever. Because yeah, this morning it's been an absolute nightmare. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I've sort of got my way through the start now, and I will be able to kick on and get this done, because I've had an absolute shocker so far this morning. Anyway, we are going to talk about lots of stuff today. We're going to talk about contracts and the sort of 5 big ones that are hanging over Arsenal right now. We spoke about Gabriel yesterday and the links with Saudi Arabia. And that kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today, and the need for Arsenal to get cracking. And they are going to get cracking on these contracts. And that's an important thing. You know, they're very well aware that this sort of clock is ticking on several of their sort of star first team players, with a couple of the youngsters as well now, adding extra importance to their talks. So we're going to get stuck into that. Got a little bit on Jorginho as well, who's over in Brazil at the moment, who as that move to Flamengo edges ever closer to being done. Got some reaction from you guys as well. Lots of reaction, actually, from the Gabriel stuff we were talking about yesterday. So many of you get involved in that. I've pulled some of them together, but if you go through yesterday's comments of the show, you'll see just how varied the opinion is on Gabriel and what Arsenal need to do, and the importance of getting him tied down to a new deal as well. And so that sort of leads in to what I wanted to talk about today in the contract stuff. Now, we know that Bukayo Saka, Gabriel, William Saliba all have just 2 years left on the deal. You could add Gabriel Martinelli into the mix with that as well. Gabriel Martinelli does have that year's extra option that Arsenal have that they can trigger. So that kind of makes it 3 years. So slightly less slightly less sort of urgency with him. But these three, if you're watching on screen, you know, Gabriel, Saka and Saliba, they don't have an option. So it is just 2 years, runs out in 2027, and Arsenal need to get extensions sorted for all of them, and they are going to try. Now, we spoke to William Saliba not so long ago. I asked him the question directly, what last week was it, whether contract talks had started yet, and he said no. He said there was no rush, which I can understand kind of from his point of view. From our point of view as fans, kind of think, yeah, there is a little bit of a rush, William, because we don't want it to be edging down towards the final year of your contract, like it did get to last time with him and Bukayo Saka before they did sign their extensions. Now, we know Arsenal are looking to open contract talks with Saka very imminently. Preliminary discussions have already taken place with him. Preliminary discussions have already taken place with Gabriel as well, and that was actually started last year. And now we've got the Saudi Arabia stuff sort of beginning to edge back into the scene when it comes to Gabriel. And it's just really important. These contracts are so key for Arsenal. You know, they were expertly handled last time around. Maybe you can look at the Saliba Saka ones and say, why was that only 4 years? You know, we're already in this situation 2 years later. They should have been 5-year deals. But if the players and their agents are absolutely set on it only being 4 years, it's quite hard, I would say, to change their minds. But on the whole, the last round of contract renewals that Arsenal did was a really successful period for the club. They got everyone that they wanted tied down. They kept the nucleus of this young team that has emerged under Mikel Arteta, and they got them tied down to contracts. Gabriel was actually the first of that round of renewals, which only finished last year with, say, Ben White, I think was probably the last one to sign his renewal. And now we're back at that stage again where Arsenal have to work on it. Last time it was Edu who was handling it. Of course, Edu no longer here. Andrea Berta will soon be appointed as Arsenal's new sporting director. Still waiting for confirmation on that. I don't think that's going to happen now, but potentially by the end of next week, we might well have some news on him. And he's going to have to really get on top of that. And we know with the discussions that are due to start with Bukayo Saka that he is absolutely going to be leading those discussions. And they are really important, because what we saw yesterday with Gabriel and in the last sort of 48 hours with him and the Saudi stuff is, as these deals start to run down, the more you start to get stories such as what we're hearing with Gabriel and the Saudi links. When I look back to what Saliba said to me and others when we were talking to him the other day about his contracts and the sort of the no rush thing, where that sort of falls down, from the players, it's fine. But from a club point of view, there is clearly a rush, because when you're as important as some of the players that Arsenal have got coming up for these renewal talks, the last thing you want is them getting into the final years of the contract. We all know how sort of nervy it began to get with Saliba and Saka last time, even though all the sort of noises coming out was they will sign. Everyone's on the same page. It's just a complicated deal, but we will get them done. But when you start getting into that final year, from the club's point of view, you obviously you lose your strength of position, and every sort of week that ticks by, basically the value of these players starts to plummet. And also when we know that clubs like Real Madrid, for example, who have got eyes on William Saliba and probably would have eyes on Bukayo Saka because, well, who wouldn't? Or Ethan Nwaneri and players like that. We know at the moment they like to operate on a case of, okay, we're not going to lay down a massive transfer fee for you. We're quite happy to wait and bide our time, let your contract run down and you can come over on a free. We'll give you loads of money on wages. Just don't sign a new deal. And they get into players' heads, and we've seen them have success with that in the past. It looks like they're going to have success with that with Trent Alexander-Arnold this summer, just like they had with Kylian Mbappe. They did obviously make an offer at a time for Mbappe, but PSG decided that wasn't what one they wanted to take. So it is really, really important, because the last thing you want is his team breaking up. And when one goes, that can kind of create a snowball effect, can't it? So Arsenal, this is a really important period for Arsenal, I would say, this year. And Andrea Berta, who myself and James Bench are going to sit down, we're doing this sort of special Inside Arsenal Extra Time this week. We're actually recording it today, but it's going to go out on Saturday. And we're sort of doing a special on Andrea Berta's appointment and what, the sort of key things that he has to really, basically the priorities when he comes through the door, because he's got a lot of them. So we're going to look at the real sort of priorities for Andrea Berta when he arrives and sort of sits down in his office at London Colney for the first time and writes out his to-do list. So we're going to look at that today, myself and James, but that show is going to go out on Saturday. But it's a big thing for him to walk into a club and kind of know he's got this, not ticking time bomb, I don't want it to sound too dramatic or sensationalist, but this really important job to do. It's not just going to be about transfers for him over the next year, which we know those are really important, but the renewals as well for this team to ensure that you can continue to really target what you want to target. You need to keep the core group of players together, and not just these three. Like I said, Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri are in the same position. They signed their first pro contracts a while ago. Since then, bang, they've exploded. They're now senior players. Miles Lewis-Skelly's going to be potentially a fully fledged international if he makes an appearance during this international break for England. Ethan Nwaneri's banging on the door of the senior team of England. So these players are going to have to be rewarded. They can't be sitting on their first professional contracts anymore, because they're going to need more money than that, because that's what their stature in the game and stature in the first team already demonstrates. And we've already seen little whispers of Real Madrid and Ethan Nwaneri, which I have no idea if they're legit or not, but I've seen a couple of stories doing the rounds of Real are starting to look at Ethan Nwaneri and stuff like that, which hopefully is just rubbish and not true. But you would think every single top club is going to be looking at Ethan Nwaneri, and if he's still on that first pro contract and he hasn't signed his new one, and Arsenal haven't been able to bring him up to the sort of money that he's going to be worth, then those sort of stories are going to start happening. So really, really important, these contract talks that Arsenal are due to begin in the next few weeks, really, few months. And really important that they get these renewals right. As I said, they did it last time. It was a fantastic renewal process last time. They went the whole way through the squad. Everyone they wanted to sign, they got signed. Let's see if that happens again. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it does. But let me know your thoughts on it all in the comments below, please, on terms of these contract renewals. How important are they? Which players should be at the very top of the list? Is there anyone you'd think, maybe it's time to sort of potentially cash in on one of these players? And then that can sort of help sort of reshape the squad over the next couple of years as well. So let me know your thoughts on it all in the comments below. Right, moving on now. Let's quickly talk about Jorginho, shall we? If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a little still of an image here. This was him arriving at the airport in Brazil, in Rio, I think it was, yesterday. He flew in with his wife, and there was various sort of journalists there who caught him. This is a sort of still from a video that one of them took, and they asked him about the links with Flamengo and whether he was here to sign for Flamengo. What did he reply? He said, we'll see what happens, out the back, out the boot that was open as they were putting the luggage in the boot. He also said, look, I'm just here for a vacation. But we all know that talks are ongoing with Flamengo, and it looks like it is a deal that is going to happen at the end of the season. Flamengo wanted it to happen in January. Arsenal weren't willing to sanction that move, so he stayed for the remainder of the season. He's going to be out of contract in the summer, And unlike the players we've just spoken about, Arsenal are not going to be renewing that contract, and Jorginho is going to go probably to Flamengo. Their sporting director, Jose Boto, was saying on the sort of situation, he says, right now the ball is in Jorginho's court. He usually treats the ball well. I hope he treats it well, so that it is better for him and for us. In other words, that he will come to Flamengo. If everything goes well, he will play in the Club World Cup, which is obviously this summer, for Flamengo. The league ends in May. The players change clubs, and there is agreement between the clubs to release the players as soon as the season ends. I think everyone's going to go. Everyone will give Jorginho his blessing when he does go. I think he's been a fantastic signing. He's, for the value that Arsenal paid, just about £10 million, £12 million, whatever it was. And we all had our reservations when he signed, but I think he's been a fantastic signing over the 2.5 years that he's going to have been at the club. I still think he's got something to offer. I would have actually liked to see him stay for another year, I have to say. I think he would have been a really good sort of squad player for next season, but I can absolutely understand why, you get a decent offer to go and play in Brazil, where we know, Jorginho has got very, very strong ties. It makes perfect sense for him to go over there and try something new. He's not played in Brazil before. And yeah, it'll be great for him. But I do think it's going to be a bit of a shame, because I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's been a really, really excellent signing for Arsenal. So that's the latest when it comes to Jorginho. I just wanted to flag up this interview. Now, I retweeted this earlier on my Twitter. Sid Lowe over in Madrid has done a fantastic interview with Mikel Merino, who's obviously over with the Spanish national team at the moment. And Sid Lowe sat down with him over there. It was some really good stuff. I'll just read you a little snippet of it. And this is Merino was talking about the upcoming games against Real Madrid. He said, "We know Madrid are hard, but we're excited. It's a historic game for the club. It's true that Liverpool are a bit far away in the Premier League, but the Champions League is special. The injuries can't be an excuse, but the season also can't be explained without them. The fact that I'm playing at centre forward, that wasn't the plan. Liverpool played very well. They win practically every game. We've lost important points, but that thing of changing the chip, we can change it in the Champions League. We're excited. We dominate most games, very good in the qualifying phase, and manage the rest of to rest players in the second leg against PSV. We're very confident. We know Madrid's history, but we have to know that we're really good too, that we're getting better, and we can beat anyone." So that's what he had to say about the Real Madrid games. But he spoke a lot in the interview with Sid about the move to the striker, how it came about, how he's trying to learn about it and everything. Honestly, it's a really, really good interview with him. I'll drop it into the description below if you haven't, if you want to give it a read. But like I said, I've retweeted it over on my Twitter page as well, and it's well worth your time. He's clearly a really sort of intelligent footballer, Merino, which he's having to demonstrate at the moment by the fact he's moved into a new position, and to his credit, is doing very well in that position. And when you sort of read how he explains it and what he's been doing to try and help and improve, I think you really get the sense of just what a sort of intelligent footballer Mikel Merino is. So yeah, fantastic interview by Sid. Absolutely give it a read if you can. So in sticking with Merino, you can see there he's in action later on today. These are the first round of fixtures of the international break coming up tonight. And we've got plenty of Arsenal interest in there. It's Spain versus Netherlands in Rotterdam. So you've got Timber on one side, obviously Merino and David Raya in the other. William Saliba in action later for France against Croatia in Split. That's a Nations League game. Italy playing Germany, so Calafiori in action over there. No Kai Havertz, of course, because of the injury in that one. Kieran Tierney playing for Scotland against Greece. And then you've got Zinchenko versus Trossard, so Ukraine versus Belgium. That's playing in Murcia in Spain. There is also Brazil in action overnight as well. Technically, that's Friday UK time, but I'll list it as Thursday as well. So Brazil in action, Gabriel in action a little bit later on today. So plenty of good football to be played there. Some good games. That Netherlands-Spain game should be pretty decent. Just fingers crossed, of course, everyone comes through them unscathed. Right, moving on to some of your reaction. As I said, there was loads of reaction. I've sort of split it into 2 pages here, but there was loads more of it. And if you want to go through what you guys all had to say, go into yesterday's show and just look at the reaction to the Gabriel and Saudi stuff. And there's a wide range of views, I have to say. It was really, really interesting. So we'll go through some of them here. Bambino Rocco says, "Morning, Charles. With the Gabriel situation, I think the club have to sell at that price." I don't know what price you mean there. I can't even remember what we spoke about yesterday in terms of a price. Was it like 120 million, something like that? You said Calafiori seems like the replacement purchase done in advance for once. The signing seems to make more sense after the previous Gabriel interest and also spending most of our summer budget on a centre-back stroke left-back. I can see Berta trying to get a big sale under his belt, something no other director has done at Arsenal. Could be a similar moment as to when Liverpool let Coutinho go to Barca. Hopefully we can go out and buy our big players like Liverpool did to get the title over the line. Quite a lot of people have spoken about this, about a potential big sale being needed to really sort of go that extra mile in the transfer market, whether that could get Arsenal over the line for an Alexander Isak type thing, which is an interesting point. And I agree there is some sort of logic in that, but I just don't think Gabriel is that player. I have to say, I think when you've got a centre-back partnership as good as Gabriel and Saliba, why would you break it up unless you're talking mega bucks, like serious mega bucks? Why would you break that up? It changes. My opinion changes if it emerges that Gabriel has no interest in signing a new contract. If that is the case, then obviously you have to sell. And we'll wait and see if that is the case or not. I would hope it's not. But if that is the case, then yes, by all means, sell, cash in, reinvest that money. And obviously there is the Calafiori there, whose best position arguably is Gabriel's position, rather at left back. But if Gabriel's quite open to signing a new contract, and we don't know that he's not yet, then I would just keep him. As I said yesterday, I think if you're going to make a big sale, maybe Gabriel Martinelli, if you can, someone like that, I think would be a better option than splitting up the best centre-back partnership in the league, or potentially even the world, especially in terms of what that might mean for Saliba as well. If he sees Gabriel go, would that have an effect on Saliba signing a new contract for Arsenal as well? So I see what you mean, Bambino, Rocco, but I'm just not sure Gabriel is that guy. Stuart says losing Gabriel would be a catastrophe. He is by far the best defender in the league, and critical for us would be a huge step backwards. Ronald says it's a no-no for Gabby Sale, given improved contract that matches that of Saliba. Derek says, can't agree with you more. We can't break up our defence. Don't want to sell any of our top players. And 100% Gabriel has improved so much and he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. So for you to say player of the year, top draw, buddy, yeah, I do think he's my Arsenal player of the year. Well, I don't think. I know he's my Arsenal player of the year. Whether other people agree with me, we'll have to wait and see when that vote is taken in well, it's not far away now, is it? Just probably about 6 weeks or so until the end of the season when the vote starts to been taken. But for me, I think only person who gets close to him, in my view, is David Raya for Arsenal Player of the Year this season. So yeah, there's some of your reaction. Let's go on to some more. As Wally at the top says, it might be an unpopular suggestion, but I would sell Big Gabby for not less than 120 million. I think we should not get emotionally attached to the players as long as we can reinvest the whole money into getting a top-notch striker and sell other bench players to finance another creative midfielder. The thing is, if you're selling Gabriel, you don't have to spend a hell of a lot of money on another centre-back. I know Calafiori's there, but Calafiori's very, very raw. I think if you're selling Gabriel, it can't just be like, right, we'll just Calafiori becomes centre-back. You've got to invest all that money basically back in another top-draw centre-back. I don't really see it, I have to say. Dwayne says, can't sell Gabriel. There's almost no price to make it worth it to break up that centre-back partnership unless he's putting in a transfer request and really digging his heels in. You keep negotiating and work something out with both centre-backs. Yeah, see, that's what Dwayne says there. That's for me. If he's behind the scenes, he would never put in a transfer request. But if he's saying, really obviously stalling over a new contract, and he's had his head clearly turned by what's on offer in Saudi Arabia, then I think the situation changes. Then I think you do have to reluctantly get the best deal possible for him, but only if that is the case, I have to say. Podgden says, I can't see why a player like Gabriel at his peak of his ability would want to go to a league like Saudi. He's practically given up professional football just for cash to play amateur football. He's already on big money. Give up a chance to win trophies. Money isn't everything in life. I mean, it's easy to say that, and I understand it. It's easy for us all to say that, but you're getting offered tax-free 500 grand, 600 grand a week, whatever it could potentially be. It's very easy for us to say, oh, why would you take that? Why would you? Surely, you're earning good money over here. But, that's, I know what you're on at Arsenal is unbelievable cash and you'll be set for life, you would hope. But, what potentially is on offer from Saudi Arabia, tax-free, it's life-changing money. It's setting your family, their family, future generations up for life. It is very easy for us to say, why would you do it? But I think unless you're in their shoes and you're getting offered the chance to play basically for through 2 or 3 years, you can set yourself up and future families up for life. And then you could potentially come back to Europe still as a 30-year-old and have a good 4 or 5 years left in Europe as well. So I can see why maybe he would want to do it. I'm not saying he does want to do it, but I can see why maybe his head, it would be a sort of decision to make in his head. And then Mr. D-Mark V6 says, likelihood is Gabriel will go where the money is at some point. Don't want to lose him, but if a silly offer comes in, why not cash in? Already reports from Spain that Saliba will cost too much for Madrid, and they are considering Dean Husan. So why don't we be ahead of the game, as he will cost a fraction of the price? Yeah, I saw that. Lots of interest in the young Spanish Bournemouth defender. We'll see what happens to him. And yeah, I suppose get ahead of the game. Try and make a move for him. But again, you're signing a young player then who's going to take time to bed in. And I just think right now you've got two players and not even at their peak yet in Gabriel and Saliba. You just don't need to spend money on anyone else. Just get them to sign a new contract. It's easier said than done, obviously. But if you can get them signed a new contract, why would you look elsewhere? You don't need to. You've got a centre back partnership that every other club in the world dreams of having. You've got that. Just keep it. Reward them. Pay them what they're worth. Keep it. Spend the money elsewhere. That's my view on it. But thank you so much for all your reaction. As I said, there was loads more. You can go and find it all on yesterday's show if you want to scroll through. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Anything you want me to discuss in tomorrow's show, let me know. Get into the comments. Give me your questions. Give me your opinions. And I'll pull some of them together and get them included in the show. Until then, speak to you soon. Bye-bye.